Welcome to tonight's journey into understanding why we sometimes find ourselves drawn to love that feels familiar in its pain, familiar in its uncertainty, familiar in the way it asks us to prove our worth rather than simply receive our value. If you're lying here tonight wondering why you keep choosing partners who can't fully see you, why you're attracted to people who keep you guessing, why love feels most real when it's just out of reach, why your heart races more for unavailability than availability, why you mistake the anxiety of chase for the chemistry of connection, you're not alone. This space, this exploration, this gentle inquiry is for you. There's no pressure here tonight. You don't need to fix anything, change anything, or figure anything out before morning. You don't need to have answers, make decisions, or transform your patterns by dawn. You're allowed to simply listen, to simply be present with whatever arises, to simply rest in the understanding that your heart's patterns make perfect sense when seen with compassion rather than judgment. You're allowed to be exactly where you are with your heart, with your patterns, with your confusion about love, with your longing for something that feels both deeply familiar and somehow wrong, with your exhaustion from chasing what seems to slip away the moment you get close, with your bewilderment at why the people who love you easily somehow fade into the background while the ones who love you conditionally become magnetic and irresistible. Tonight, we're not going to analyze your dating history or create action plans for better relationships. We're not going to make lists of red flags or strategies for choosing differently. No pressure to become someone different by morning. No requirement to have insights that will change everything. No expectation that understanding will immediately translate into different choices. Just gentle understanding, patient exploration, like sitting with a wise friend who sees your heart clearly and loves you exactly as you are, patterns and all. Tonight's topic: why you still chase love that hurts. Why you're drawn to relationships that require you to prove your worth. Why unavailable feels more compelling than available. Why love feels most real when you're working for it, most significant when you're uncertain about it, most valuable when you're not sure you can have it. Maybe you know this pattern intimately, the way your heart races when someone seems just slightly out of reach, the way your nervous system activates when someone's interest feels conditional, the way uncertainty feels like intensity, like passion, like the sign that this must be important because it's so consuming. The way you mistake anxiety for chemistry, unavailability for mystery, emotional distance for depth, the need to prove your worth for the experience of love itself. Maybe you recognize the way you become hypervigilant with people who can't quite choose you, analyzing every word, every gesture, every moment of connection or disconnection. The way you find yourself changing, adapting, becoming who you think they want you to be, the way you lose yourself in the pursuit of someone who may not even be capable of seeing you clearly. Carl Jung believed that we don't meet people by accident. We meet them because they represent something unfinished in our own psyche, something calling for completion, something our unconscious mind recognizes as an opportunity to heal an old wound or understand an old pattern, or finally receive what we've been seeking since we were very small. He once said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. The people we chase, the relationships that consume us, the patterns that confuse us, they're all messengers carrying information about our deepest needs, our oldest wounds, our most protected parts. They're showing us something about what we learned love was supposed to feel like, what we learned we had to do to earn affection, what we learned about our own worthiness and how it gets proven in relationship. Chasing love that hurts, in this view, is not a character flaw or a sign that you're broken or damaged or somehow incapable of healthy love. It's your psyche trying to heal something very old, very deep, very protected. A part of you that learned, somewhere along the way, that love comes with conditions, that affection must be earned, that your worth is proven through your ability to win someone over, that relationships are places where you demonstrate your value rather than places where your value is recognized and celebrated. And tonight we're going to visit this part of you with tremendous gentleness, with infinite patience, with the understanding that this part has been working so hard to keep you safe in the only way it knew how, not to shame it or judge it or force it to change overnight, but to understand it, to see it clearly, to appreciate the beautiful protective wisdom that lives inside what looks like self-sabotage, but is actually a very intelligent attempt to find safety in love, like befriending a wounded animal in the forest, slowly, carefully, with deep respect for how long it's been protecting itself, because sometimes just being seen and understood with complete acceptance loosens the grip of old patterns and lets your heart remember what it's really looking for underneath, all the familiar pain. Take a moment now to breathe deeply, to feel your body supported by whatever surface holds you, to notice that in this moment, right now, you don't have to chase anyone or anything. You don't have to prove your worth or earn love or win anyone over. You can simply be here, breathing, listening, allowing your heart to be seen and understood exactly as it is, with all its beautiful protective patterns intact. Let's start gently, with recognition rather than analysis, with compassion rather than judgment, with curiosity about how intelligently your heart has been trying to solve a very complex problem. How to be loved safely in a world where love has often come with conditions. But first, take a moment to breathe. Feel your body where it rests. Notice the temperature of the air on your skin, the weight of any blankets or clothing, the way gravity holds you against whatever surface supports you. Notice that you're safe right now in this moment, in this space. You don't have to perform or prove anything to be here. You don't have to chase anything to deserve this time for yourself, this moment of understanding, this opportunity to see your patterns with new eyes. You can simply be present with what arises as we explore these tender territories of the heart. Think back to the last time you felt your heart quicken because someone seemed interested but not quite available, present but not fully present, caring but not consistently caring. Maybe they took hours or days to text back, leaving you checking your phone, wondering if you'd said something wrong, analyzing your last interaction for clues about what happened to their interest. Maybe they were emotionally present one day and distant the next, keeping you constantly trying to figure out the code to understand what you needed to do or be or say to bring back their warmth, their attention, their engagement. Maybe they spoke about their ex in ways that made you feel like you were auditioning for a role that was already cast, competing with a ghost, trying to prove you were worthy of the love they'd given someone else. Maybe they talked about future plans but never quite included you in them, spoke about commitment in abstract terms but never made it concrete with you, shared deeply about their inner world but maintained an emotional distance that left you feeling like you were always reaching for something just beyond your grasp. Or perhaps it was more subtle than obvious unavailability. Maybe they showed interest but always seemed to have one foot out the door, ready to leave if things got too real, too demanding, too close. Maybe they loved your independence until you needed them, appreciated your strength until you showed vulnerability, admired your confidence until you revealed insecurity. Maybe they wanted intimacy but feared it, desired connection but sabotaged it, asked for your heart but couldn't quite hold it safely, and then something shifted in you. Instead of walking away from the uncertainty, you leaned in. Instead of recognizing this as a sign of incompatibility, some part of you interpreted it as a challenge, a puzzle to solve, a mountain to climb. Proof that if you could just be enough, funny enough, understanding enough, patient enough, attractive enough, independent enough, supportive enough, loving enough, you could win the love that felt so tantalizingly close yet consistently out of reach. You might have found yourself analyzing every word they said, looking for hidden meanings, signs of deeper feeling, evidence that underneath the distance was someone who really cared but just didn't know how to show it. You might have started changing parts of yourself to match what you thought they wanted, becoming more or less emotional, more or less available, more or less demanding, trying to find the magic combination that would unlock their heart. You might have become hyper-aware of their moods, their schedule, their preferences, their triggers, trying to position yourself as indispensable in their life, the one person who truly understood them, who could love them despite their walls, who could be patient with their fears, who could prove that love didn't have to be scary or overwhelming or demanding. And afterward, lying in bed or sitting in your car or staring out your window, part of you may have asked, why do I do this? Why do I chase people who can't really see me? Why does unavailable feel more attractive than available? Why does love only feel real when I'm working for it? Why do I lose interest when someone loves me easily and become obsessed when someone loves me conditionally? Perhaps you've noticed this pattern repeat itself across multiple relationships, multiple years, multiple attempts to choose differently. The people who show consistent interest somehow fade into the background of your awareness, while the ones who keep you guessing become magnetic, compelling, impossible to ignore. The ones who love you easily feel too simple, too boring, too safe, while the ones who love you conditionally feel complex and therefore more real, more significant, more worth your attention and energy. The ones who choose you quickly feel like they must not really see you, while the ones who take their time deciding feel like they're really considering whether you're worth it. The ones who express affection freely feel like they must not understand what love costs, while the ones who ration their affection feel like they understand that love is precious, rare, something to be earned rather than freely given. That's the question this entire journey sits inside of. Not what's wrong with me, but what is this pattern trying to show me about what I learned love was supposed to feel like? What is my heart trying to heal through these complicated relationships? What am I seeking in the chase that I don't believe I can find in the catch? Attachment theory shows us that this pattern often begins not with romantic relationships, but with our earliest experiences of love and attention, our first lessons about what love looks like, feels like, costs, requires. Your unconscious mind is incredibly intelligent, and it will always choose familiar discomfort over unfamiliar peace because the familiar feels safer, more predictable, more manageable, even when it hurts, even when it exhausts you, even when it leaves you feeling empty and confused. If love in your early life came with conditions, if affection had to be earned through performance, if attention came with anxiety, if the people who were meant to love you unconditionally were sometimes there and sometimes not, sometimes warm and sometimes cold, sometimes attuned and sometimes distracted, then your nervous system learned that love and uncertainty go together like puzzle pieces, that calm, consistent affection might actually be the dangerous thing, the unfamiliar thing, the thing that doesn't match what love is supposed to feel like in your body. Your childhood didn't have to be traumatic or obviously dysfunctional for this pattern to develop. Maybe you had a parent who was loving but stressed, present but preoccupied, affectionate but inconsistent. Maybe affection came when you achieved something but disappeared when you were just being yourself, just existing without accomplishment, just needing care without having earned it through performance. Maybe the most emotionally engaging parent was also the most unpredictable one, teaching you that intensity and inconsistency were The markers of deep connection, that calm relationships were boring relationships, that if people weren't working for each other's love, they weren't really loving each other at all. Perhaps your parents loved each other but showed that love through drama, through passionate fights followed by passionate reconciliations, through breaking apart and coming back together, through emotional volatility that you learned was what real love looked like: messy, complicated, requiring constant effort to maintain. Or maybe you learned that love was something you had to fight for, earn, prove your worthiness of. That relationships were supposed to be work, struggle, evidence of your value as a person. That if someone loved you easily, it somehow meant less, carried less weight, proved less about your fundamental lovability. That the people worth having were the ones who made you question whether you were enough. Because if they loved you without question, they must not really understand how love works. But here's what's important to understand, what we'll explore with infinite gentleness tonight. This pattern is never actually about the other person. It's never about your taste in partners or your inability to choose well or your attraction to bad people. It's about your relationship with your own worth, your own lovability, your own right to be chosen without having to earn it, loved without having to prove it, cherished without having to maintain it through constant effort and vigilance. Before we go deeper into the beliefs that drive this pattern, I want us to pause and appreciate something that might sound surprising: your pattern of chasing love. That hurts is not a mistake. It's not a character flaw or a sign that you're broken or evidence that you don't know how to love or be loved. It's actually an incredibly intelligent protective strategy that your heart developed to keep you safe in the only way it knew how. Somewhere in your emotional memory, there's a part of you that believes love is supposed to hurt a little, supposed to make you anxious, supposed to require constant attention and effort to maintain. That if someone loves you without you having to work for it, they must not really see you clearly, because if they really saw you, really understood your complexities and imperfections and needs, they would understand that your love is something to be earned, not given freely. This part of you isn't broken or self-destructive or masochistic. It's protective. It learned that the safest way to love was to love people who couldn't fully love you back, because that way you'd never have to risk the ultimate vulnerability of being completely seen and accepted. If they can't love you fully, then you never have to find out what would happen if they could. If they can't choose you completely, then you never have to risk being completely rejected. This part of you has been working so hard to keep you safe. It steers you toward relationships where you know what your role is, where you get to be the pursuer, the one who works for love, the one who proves worthiness. It keeps you away from relationships where you might be loved unconditionally. Because unconditional love feels dangerous when you've learned that all love comes with conditions, all affection must be earned, all relationships require you to be someone other than who you naturally are. Think about it. If you're always chasing someone who can't quite love you back, you never have to face the terror of being truly seen and potentially found lacking. If you're always trying to win someone over, you never have to sit still and trust that you might be lovable just as you are. If you're always focused on someone else's emotional availability, you never have to face your own fear of being available, of being open, of being vulnerable enough to receive love that asks nothing of you except your presence. Your heart learned a very specific lesson, that love is safer when you're working for it, because then you have some control over the outcome. You can try harder, be better, do more. You can adjust your strategy, change your approach, become who you think they need you to be. But if love is something you simply receive because you exist, then you're completely vulnerable to another person's choice, and that can feel terrifying when you've learned that people's choices about loving you are often unpredictable. conditional, subject to change without warning. Your nervous system says, better to be in control of earning love than to be helpless in receiving it. It's trying to give you power in a situation where you once felt powerless, agency in a dynamic where you once felt at the mercy of other people's moods, availability, capacity to love. So you unconsciously choose relationships where you get to be active rather than passive, where you get to demonstrate your worth rather than simply trust in it, where you get to solve the puzzle of someone else's heart rather than rest in the mystery of your own lovability. And there's profound wisdom in this strategy. It's kept you safe from the kind of vulnerability that once felt dangerous. It's given you a sense of purpose and identity in relationships. It's allowed you to feel like you have some control over love, some way to influence the outcome, some path toward the connection you're seeking. But, and this is where we're going next, this strategy was developed when you were younger, when you had fewer resources, when the adults around you had their own limitations and wounds and inability to love you the way you deserved. What served you then might not serve you now. What kept you safe in one context might be keeping you stuck in another. The relationships you're capable of now, as an adult with choice and agency, and the ability to leave situations that don't serve you, are fundamentally different from the relationships you experienced as a child when you were dependent on adults, who may not have had the capacity to love you unconditionally, consistently, without asking you to be someone other than who you were. Your heart is still trying to solve a problem that may no longer exist: how to get love from people who can't give it freely. But what if, as an adult, you actually have access to people who can love freely? What if you have access to relationships where love doesn't have to be earned, where affection doesn't have to be chased, where your worth isn't something you have to prove, but something that's recognized and celebrated simply because you exist? What if the love you're actually seeking, the love that would truly heal your heart and help you feel genuinely chosen and cherished, is not the love that confirms your old beliefs about how love works, but the love that gently, gradually, helps you discover that those beliefs might have been based on old information, old limitations, old wounds that are ready to heal? This is where real transformation begins, not with judging your patterns or forcing yourself to choose differently, but with understanding that your patterns develop for good reasons and appreciating them for how they've served you, even as you begin to consider whether you might be ready for something different. Your heart has been so intelligent, so creative, so persistent in its attempts to find safety in love. And now we're going to help it discover that safety might be available in ways it never imagined that love might be possible without the familiar struggle, that you might be lovable in ways that don't require constant proof. Now we're going to explore the 3 beliefs that often live underneath this pattern of chasing love that hurts. These aren't thoughts you necessarily think consciously. They're more like the operating system running quietly in the background, shaping your responses to love and relationships in ways you might not even notice until someone points them out. Before we begin, I want you to know that understanding these beliefs isn't about judging them or rushing to change them or proving that they're wrong. These beliefs developed for very good reasons. They were your young heart's best attempt to make sense of love, to find safety in relationships, to create some sense of control and predictability in situations where you may have felt powerless, overlooked, or misunderstood. As we explore each belief, notice what resonates in your body. Notice what feels familiar, what brings up emotion, what makes you want to defend or explain or justify. All of these responses are information, your system telling you where the old patterns still live, where healing might be most needed, where your heart is still carrying old wounds that are ready to be seen with compassion. And remember, you can take this exploration at whatever pace feels right for you. If something feels too intense, too close to home, too much to take in all at once, you can always return your attention to your breath, to the safety of this moment, to the knowledge that you're learning about these patterns, not to fix yourself, but to understand yourself with greater compassion and clarity. The first belief: if someone loves me easily, they don't really see me. The first belief that often drives us toward painful love is this: if someone loves me easily, they don't really see me. If someone can love me without conditions, without challenges, without requiring me to earn it, they must not understand who I really am, what I really need, how love really works. This might sound strange when you first hear it, but it's actually quite logical when you understand where it comes from. This belief usually develops when we learn early in life that love comes with conditions, that affection has to be earned, that attention must be deserved, that the people who matter most are the ones who challenge us, who make us work for their approval, who see something in us that requires improvement, development, change. Maybe you had a parent who was loving but critical, someone who cared deeply about your success and your well-being, but rarely celebrated you just for being yourself, just for existing, just for showing up in the world as you naturally were. Maybe praise came only after achievement, and attention came most consistently when you were struggling or performing or trying to meet their expectations of who you should become. Maybe the most emotionally engaging relationships in your childhood were also the most complex ones, where love was present but never quite unconditional, where acceptance came with subtle requirements to be different, better, more manageable, less needy, more independent, more successful, more grateful, more understanding of other people's limitations. When this happens, our young hearts learn a very specific lesson. Real love sees your flaws and challenges you to be better. Real love doesn't just accept you as you are, it sees your potential and helps you reach it. Easy love must be shallow love, surface love, love that doesn't really understand what you need to grow and heal and become who you're meant to be. This belief says that if someone really saw you, really understood your complexities and imperfections, and the ways you still need to grow, they would understand that your love is something to be earned, not freely given. They would see that you need to be challenged, pushed, encouraged to be better. They would know that accepting you just as you are would be enabling, settling, not really loving you in the way you deserve to be loved. This belief shows up in adult relationships in ways that can be heartbreaking to recognize. You feel more attracted to people who seem to see your potential rather than loving your present reality. You interpret criticism as caring and acceptance as indifference or lack of attention. You find yourself most interested in partners who make you feel like you need to improve, grow, change, or prove yourself worthy of their love and attention. When someone shows consistent interest and affection without requiring you to earn it, you unconsciously wonder what they're missing, what they would see if they really knew you, really understood your struggles, really paid attention to your flaws and limitations and areas where you still need to grow. You create tests for your partners, consciously or unconsciously, to see if they'll stay when things get complicated, when you're not at your best, when you're needy or difficult or struggling with something. You need to know that their love can survive seeing you clearly, and the only way to test that is to make sure they really see you, flaws and all. Your mind says, if they love me this easily, they must not understand who I really am. And if they don't understand who I really am, then this isn't real love. Real love sees everything and chooses to stay anyway. But that choosing shouldn't be easy. It should be a decision, a commitment, a choice made with full knowledge of what loving me will cost. But here's what's so wise about this belief. It's trying to protect you from the vulnerability of being loved for exactly who you are, without improvement, without change, without earning it. Because if someone loves you without conditions, without challenges, without requiring you to prove your worthiness, then you're faced with the terrifying possibility that you might be lovable just as you are. And that level of acceptance can feel more dangerous than rejection because it's so unfamiliar, so different from what you learned love was supposed to feel like. Your nervous system, which is always prioritizing safety over happiness, familiarity over growth, says, better to be loved for your potential than to risk finding out whether you're acceptable as you are right now, in this moment, without changing anything about yourself. The second belief: I'm only worthy of love when I'm pursuing it. The second belief that often drives this pattern is, I'm only worthy of love when I'm pursuing it. I'm only valuable when I'm actively demonstrating my love, only lovable when I'm working for someone's attention, only deserving of affection when I'm earning it through effort and sacrifice, and the willingness to chase what doesn't come easily. This belief is particularly insidious because it turns love into a performance rather than a state of being. It says that your worth isn't inherent, it's something you generate through effort, through chase, through the act of trying to win someone over, through the demonstration of how much you're willing to sacrifice for the possibility of being loved. This belief often develops in families where love was conditional on behavior, where attention had to be earned through achievement or good behavior or taking care of other people's needs, where affection was given as a reward rather than as a baseline of relationship. Maybe you learned that love was something you received when you were useful, helpful, entertaining, successful, or solving other people's problems. Maybe the most love you received came when you were trying to help someone else feel better, when you were putting their needs before your own, when you were being the good child, the helpful child, the child who didn't ask for too much and gave more than they received. When this happens, we learn that love is transactional rather than freely given, that our worth is generated through the act of loving others, not through the simple fact of our existence. That relationships are about what we can provide, what we can do, how we can serve, rather than who we are at our core. This belief manifests in relationships in ways that can exhaust your heart and drain your energy. You feel most valuable when you're chasing someone, because that's when you're actively demonstrating your love, proving your worthiness, showing how much you care. You lose interest in people who don't require you to prove your worth because without the chase, without the effort, without the struggle, you're not sure what you're contributing to the relationship. You interpret your own romantic feelings as most valid when they're focused on someone who's just out of reach, because that's when your love feels most active, most alive, most meaningful. When someone is easily available, your feelings for them seem less real, less significant, less worth your attention. You unconsciously create distance in relationships that become too easy, because easy love doesn't give you the opportunity to prove your worthiness, to demonstrate your value, to show what you're willing to sacrifice for the possibility of being chosen. You feel most like yourself when you're trying to win someone over, because the pursuit gives you a sense of purpose, an identity. Without someone to chase, without someone to win, without someone to prove yourself to, you're not sure who you are in relationship, what role you're supposed to play, what you have to offer. Your mind says, if I'm not working for love, then I'm not earning it. And if I'm not earning it, then I don't deserve it. Love that comes without effort must not be real love, because real love requires sacrifice, requires proof, requires someone to choose me over easier options. The third belief: real love is supposed to be difficult. The third belief that often underlies chasing love that hurts is this: real love is supposed to be difficult. Easy love, comfortable love, peaceful love. These must not be the real thing, because authentic love is supposed to challenge you, change you, sometimes hurt you in the service of growth and transformation. This might be the most challenging belief to recognize because it often gets confused with passion, intensity, or depth. But this belief says that if a relationship doesn't require constant effort, if love doesn't come with struggle, if you're not fighting for each other in some way, then it must not be significant enough, deep enough, real enough to be the love you're actually seeking. This belief often develops when we witness relationships around us that equate intensity with intimacy, drama with depth, struggle with significance. Maybe your parents had a relationship that was passionate but tumultuous, and you learned that real love involves fighting and making up, breaking apart and coming back together, emotional volatility that proved how much they cared about each other. Maybe the most emotionally engaging relationships you witnessed were also the most complicated ones, where people were always working through something, always overcoming obstacles, always proving their commitment through their willingness to endure difficulty. Maybe you learned that love stories worth talking about were always stories of overcoming obstacles, winning someone over, fighting for relationship against all odds. That easy love was boring love, simple love was shallow love, and if you weren't struggling for each other, you weren't really loving each other. This belief shows up in relationships in ways that can keep you trapped in cycles of unnecessary pain. You interpret ease in relationships as boredom or lack of chemistry. You feel most alive in relationships that have emotional ups and downs because the relief after pain feels like love. The reconciliation after conflict feels like connection. The making up after breaking apart feels like proof that this relationship really matters. You unconsciously create or maintain drama in relationships because without it, you're not sure the relationship is significant enough, deep enough, worth your time and energy. You need the struggle to feel like the love is real. You lose interest in partners who make love feel simple because simple doesn't feel like the epic love story you believe you deserve. You want love that transforms you, challenges you, pushes you to grow, even if that growth comes through pain and difficulty. You equate anxiety with excitement, uncertainty with passion, and working for love with the experience of loving deeply. Calm feels like absence rather than presence. Peace feels like boredom rather than safety. Ease feels like settling rather than arriving. Your mind says, if this relationship isn't challenging me, changing me, sometimes hurting me, then it must not be deep enough to be real love. Real love requires effort, requires struggle, requires both people to fight for what they have together. Now that we've explored the beliefs that often drive this pattern, let's talk about what comes next. Because most people think healing means eliminating these patterns, fixing this part of themselves, developing the willpower to choose differently, or proving to themselves that these beliefs are wrong and should be discarded immediately. But real healing starts with meeting these parts of yourself with tremendous compassion, with appreciation for how hard they've been working to keep you safe, with understanding that they developed for very good reasons and have been serving important functions in your life, even if they're no longer serving you in the ways you need. This is perhaps the most radical thing you can do for your heart. Instead of judging the patterns that have been protecting you, instead of trying to force yourself to be different, instead of criticizing yourself for being attracted to unavailable people or for creating drama in peaceful relationships, you can turn toward these parts. This is perhaps the most radical thing you can do for your heart. Instead of judging the patterns that have been protecting you, instead of trying to force yourself to be different, instead of criticizing yourself for being attracted to unavailable people or for creating drama in peaceful relationships, you can turn toward these parts of yourself with curiosity, appreciation, and unconditional love. So tonight, instead of trying to change your patterns or judge them as wrong or broken, we're going to practice something completely different. We're going to have a conversation with the part of you that chases love that hurts, and we're going to thank it for everything it's been trying to do for you all these years. That part of you that's drawn to unavailable people. It's not broken or self-destructive or evidence that you don't know how to love properly. It's been trying to keep you safe in the only way it knew how. It learned that love comes with conditions, so it chooses people who provide familiar conditions. It learned that your worth has to be proven, so it puts you in situations where you get to prove it. It learned that real love involves struggle, so it finds you relationships that feel significant through their difficulty. This part of you has been working so incredibly hard to protect you from the vulnerability of being loved unconditionally, completely, without having to earn it or prove you deserve it. Because unconditional love for someone who learned that love comes with conditions can feel like a trick, a trap, or something too good to be true, something that will inevitably be taken away once the other person really sees who you are. So, instead of fighting this part of yourself, instead of trying to override it or eliminate it or prove it wrong, what if you could say something like this? Thank you for trying to keep me safe all these years. Thank you for helping me avoid the terror of being loved for exactly who I am, without improvement, without change, without having to earn it. Thank you for giving me relationships where I know what my role is, where I get to be the pursuer, the prover, the one who works for love. Thank you for protecting me from the vulnerability of not knowing whether I'm lovable just as I am right now, without doing anything different. Thank you for teaching me that I could have some control in relationships by working harder, being better, trying more. Thank you for giving me a sense of purpose and identity through the chase, through the effort, through the demonstration of how much I'm willing to sacrifice for the possibility of being chosen. Thank you for steering me away from people who might love me easily because easy love felt dangerous when I learned that love was supposed to be earned. Thank you for helping me avoid the fear of being truly seen and potentially found lacking. Thank you for keeping me in relationships where I could focus on someone else's availability instead of facing my own fear of being available. And then, maybe, if it feels authentic and true, I see how hard you've been working. I see how much you care about me, how much you want me to be safe, how much you want to protect me from being hurt in the ways I was hurt before. And I wonder if you might be willing to rest a little bit. I wonder if you might be willing to let me experiment with being loved in ways that feel different from what we learned love was supposed to be. This is the beginning of healing, not fighting your patterns, but befriending them. Not eliminating this part of yourself, but helping it feel safe enough to relax its grip just a little bit. Not proving that your beliefs are wrong, but appreciating them for how they've served you, while gently exploring whether you might be ready for new information about what love can be. Because this part of you has been on high alert for so long, scanning for the familiar signs of love, the uncertainty, the chase, the need to prove yourself, the requirement to earn affection through effort and performance. It's been trying to solve a very old problem. How do I get love in a world where love has to be earned? How do I protect myself from the pain of being rejected for who I really am? How do I maintain some sense of control in relationships so I'm not completely at the mercy of other people's choices, but what if the problem has changed? What if, as an adult with choice and agency and the ability to leave situations that don't serve you, you actually have access to relationships where love doesn't have to be earned, where affection doesn't have to be chased, where your worth isn't something you have to prove, but something that's recognized and celebrated simply because you exist? What if there are people in the world who are capable of seeing you clearly, all of you, including the parts you try to hide or improve, and choosing you anyway? Not your potential, not the version of you that might exist someday if you work hard enough, but exactly who you are right now in this moment, with all your beautiful imperfections and human struggles. Your nervous system might need some convincing about this. It might need evidence, gathered slowly and gently over time, that love can actually be safe. That being chosen can actually be trustworthy. That someone loving you easily doesn't mean they don't see you clearly. It might mean they see you very clearly and love what they see. This is where the real work happens. Not in your mind, but in your body. Not through thinking differently, but through experiencing differently. Not through willpower or determination or forcing yourself to choose better partners, but through gradually expanding your capacity to receive love that feels different from what you learned love was supposed to feel like. And this happens slowly, gently, with tremendous patience for the pace of your nervous system's healing. Your system has been protecting you for years, maybe decades. It's not going to trust new information overnight. It needs time to test whether this new kind of love is actually safe. Time to experiment with being loved without having to chase it. Time to practice receiving affection without having to earn it through performance or sacrifice. You might notice that when someone shows consistent interest in you, your body feels anxious rather than happy. That's not because something is wrong with you. That's because your nervous system is saying, this is new, this is different, this doesn't match what we learned love was supposed to feel like. We need to be careful here. You might find yourself unconsciously creating distance when relationships feel too easy, or testing your partner's commitment when they show too much unconditional affection. That's not self-sabotage, that's your system trying to get back to familiar ground where it knows how to operate, where it understands the rules, where it can predict what's expected and what's safe. You might discover that peaceful love actually feels boring or unreal because your body is used to the adrenaline rush of chase and uncertainty, the activation that comes with not knowing where you stand, the intensity that comes with working for someone's attention. That's not a sign that you need more drama. That's a sign that your nervous system is learning to find safety in calm rather than stimulation in chaos. This is all normal. This is all part of the process. This is your system slowly, carefully learning that love doesn't have to hurt to be real, that you don't have to chase affection to deserve it, that someone can see you clearly and love you unconditionally, and that can actually be safe, trustworthy, lasting. But let's be honest about something important. This kind of healing doesn't happen just because you understand it intellectually. It doesn't happen because you read about healthy relationships or make lists of what you want in a partner or decide that you're going to choose differently from now on. It happens through experience, through relationship, through gradually expanding your window of tolerance for love that feels different from what you learned love was supposed to be. And that means you might need to practice receiving love in small doses at first. Practice staying present when someone is consistently kind to you. Practice not creating chaos when a relationship feels peaceful. Practice trusting that someone's easy affection might be real affection, deep affection, lasting affection, not shallow affection that will disappear as soon as they really get to know you. This isn't about forcing yourself to choose different partners or trying to be attracted to people you're not naturally drawn to. It's about gradually becoming a person who can recognize and receive the kind of love that would actually nourish your heart, rather than automatically seeking out relationships that confirm your old beliefs about what love is supposed to feel.
Like and cost, because here's what's beautiful about this process. The love you're actually seeking underneath all the patterns of chasing and proving and earning, the love that would heal these old wounds and help you feel truly chosen and
cherished, isn't going to look like chase and uncertainty and having to work for someone's attention. It's going to look like someone seeing you clearly and choosing you anyway. Someone loving your imperfections rather than challenging you to improve them. Someone offering affection freely rather than making you earn it through performance or sacrifice. But first, that part of you that's been protecting you through pursuit and proof needs to feel safe enough to let this new kind of love in. And that happens through compassion, patience, and practice, not through judgment, force, or trying to think your way into different patterns. Now we're going to explore something that might be completely new territory for you. Recognizing what love actually feels like in your body when it's not mixed with anxiety, chase, uncertainty, or the need to prove yourself worthy of receiving it. This is such important work because many of us have spent so long in relationships that activate our nervous systems, that keep us in a state of hypervigilance and effort, that we've forgotten what calm, safe, nourishing love feels like. We've become so accustomed to the adrenaline rush of uncertainty, the activation that comes with not knowing where we stand, that peace can feel foreign, unfamiliar, even boring or wrong. Most of us who have patterns of chasing love that hurts have become absolute experts at recognizing the physical sensations of romantic anxiety. We know intimately the flutter in your stomach when someone takes hours to text back, the rush of adrenaline when someone seems interested but not quite available, the way your heart races when you're trying to decode mixed signals, analyze subtle changes in their behavior, figure out what you need to do or say or be to maintain their interest. We know the intensity that comes with uncertainty, the way your whole body becomes activated when you don't know where you stand with someone, when their feelings for you seem conditional or unpredictable. We know the hypervigilance that comes with loving someone who can't quite love you back consistently, the way you start scanning their every word and gesture for signs of pulling away, losing interest, finding someone better. These sensations can become so familiar that we mistake them for love itself. We think that flutter means chemistry, that anxiety means passion, that the need to chase means we've found someone worth having. We confuse the activation of our nervous system with the experience of deep connection, the fear of loss with the reality of love, but real love, the kind that actually nourishes your heart and nervous system rather than depleting it, feels completely different in your body. And if you've never experienced it consistently, or if you've dismissed it as boring or unreal or not intense enough, you might not even know what to look for, what to recognize, what to trust as authentic connection. Real love feels like coming
Home to yourself, not like leaving yourself behind to win someone over.
It feels like expansion rather than contraction, like breathing more deeply rather than holding your breath, like relaxation rather than activation. Let me walk you through what love might feel like in your body when it's not mixed with fear, anxiety, uncertainty, or the need to perform. In your chest, love feels like expansion rather than contraction. Instead of the tight, anxious feeling of wondering if you're enough, if you're doing enough, if you're being enough to maintain someone's interest, there's a sense of spaciousness, of being able to breathe fully and deeply. Your heart doesn't race with anxiety about where you stand. It rests in warmth, in the simple pleasure of being cared for consistently, reliably, without conditions. In your stomach, love feels settled rather than churning. Instead of that familiar flutter of uncertainty, that knot of anxiety that comes with not knowing how someone feels about you or whether they'll still be interested tomorrow, there's a sense of groundedness, of being held by something reliable and consistent. Your digestion actually works better when you're in relationship with someone who makes you feel safe, because your nervous system can relax enough to focus on basic functions like eating and sleeping instead of constantly scanning for threats to the relationship. In your shoulders and neck, love feels like release rather than tension. Instead of bracing yourself for disappointment or rejection, carrying the physical stress of constantly trying to read between the lines and figure out what someone needs, from you, your body can actually relax in the presence of someone who consistently chooses you. You might notice that you sleep better, that your jaw unclenches, that you don't carry the physical burden of uncertainty and effort that comes with loving someone who can't quite love you back. In your mind, love feels clear rather than obsessive. Instead of spending hours analyzing text messages or trying to figure out where you stand, instead of constantly strategizing about how to maintain someone's interest or what you need to do differently to win their affection, your thoughts can
focus on other things.
You're not constantly scanning for signs of approval or rejection because the approval is consistent and the rejection isn't a threat that keeps you awake at night. This might sound boring if you're used to the intensity of chase and uncertainty. Your nervous system might actually interpret this kind of calm as danger, as something being wrong because it doesn't match what you learned love was supposed to feel like in your body. You might find yourself creating problems where none exist, looking for signs of distance or disconnection, unconsciously testing the relationship to make sure it's real. But here's what's important to understand. This kind of love isn't boring. It's peaceful. And peace in relationship isn't the absence of passion, it's the presence of safety. And safety is what allows real intimacy to develop, real vulnerability to emerge, real connection to deepen over time without the constant threat of loss or abandonment. When you're not spending your energy trying to win someone over, that energy is available for actually getting to know them. When you're not constantly worried about whether they'll stay, you can focus on whether you want them to, whether you actually enjoy their company, whether this relationship nourishes your soul or just feeds your familiar patterns. When you're not performing your lovability, trying to be who you think they want you to be, you can discover whether you actually like who you are when you're with them, whether they bring out the best in you or ask you to hide parts of yourself to maintain their interest. But learning to recognize and trust this kind of love requires practice, especially if your nervous system has been trained to equate intensity with significance, anxiety with attraction, effort with evidence that the relationship really matters. So let's practice right now, just for a moment, recognizing what safety feels like in your body. Take a breath and imagine being with someone who sees you clearly, all of you, including the parts you usually try to hide or improve, and chooses you anyway. Not your potential, not the version of you that might exist someday if you work hard enough to become who they want, but exactly who you are right now, in this moment, with all your beautiful imperfections and human struggles. Imagine someone who doesn't make you guess where you stand, who expresses affection freely rather than making you earn it through performance or sacrifice, who is consistent in their care rather than unpredictable in their attention, reliable in their presence rather than sporadic in their availability. Imagine someone who doesn't require you to chase them or prove your worth, but who actively chooses you, pursues you, demonstrates their commitment to you without you having to ask for it, beg for it, or work to maintain it. Notice what happens in your body as you imagine this. Does it feel calm or anxious, peaceful or boring, safe or scary, real or too good to be true? If it feels scary, that's completely normal and understandable. Your nervous system might be saying, this is too different, this is too unfamiliar, this doesn't match what we learned love was supposed to feel like. Where's the challenge? Where's the proof that this is real? Where's the familiar struggle that tells us this relationship really matters? If it feels boring, that's also normal and makes perfect sense. Your system might be used to the adrenaline of chase and uncertainty, the activation that comes with not knowing where you stand, and calm might feel like the absence of chemistry rather than the presence of safety, like settling rather than arriving at what you've always been seeking. But if you can stay with this imagination for just a moment longer, breathing deeply and allowing your body to relax, you might notice something deeper emerging. A sense of relief, a feeling of, oh, this is what I've actually been looking for. underneath all the chase and uncertainty and effort. This is what my heart has been seeking, not the drama of proving my worth, but the simple peace of being chosen, not the intensity of earning someone's love, but the quiet joy of being loved for exactly who I am. This is what healing looks like. Gradually expanding your capacity to recognize and receive love that feels different from what you learned love was supposed to be. Learning to trust that easy love might be real love, that consistent affection might be deep affection, that someone choosing you without requiring you to earn it might be the most authentic love of all. Now we come to perhaps the most challenging part of healing this pattern. Learning to stay present with love that feels different from what you learned love was supposed to be. Learning to tolerate the anxiety that comes with being loved in ways that don't match your old templates for how relationships work. This is where the real transformation happens. Not in understanding your patterns intellectually, not in making lists of what you want in a partner or promises about choosing differently, but in gradually expanding your capacity to receive love that doesn't require you to chase it, earn it, or prove your worth to maintain it. But let's be
very gentle with this exploration, very patient with the pace of this healing.
Learning to stay present with unfamiliar love is like learning to trust solid ground when you've spent your whole life navigating quicksand. It requires patience, practice, tremendous self-compassion, and the understanding that your nervous system is going to need time and evidence to believe that this new kind of love is actually safe. For many of us, the moment a relationship starts feeling too easy, too available, too unconditionally accepting, something inside us begins to panic. Not because we don't want this kind of love, but because it's so unfamiliar that our nervous system interprets it as dangerous, wrong, too good to be true, or evidence that the other person doesn't really see us clearly. Your system might create thoughts like, "This is too good to be true, something must be wrong. They must not really see me, because if they really saw me, they would understand that love is supposed to be more work than this. This doesn't feel like love because it doesn't hurt, doesn't make me anxious, doesn't require me to prove myself.
I must be settling for someone who's not challenging enough, not interesting enough, not worth my time and energy. This is boring. Where's the passion, the intensity, the feeling that this relationship really matters?" These thoughts aren't random. They're your psyche's way of trying to get back to familiar ground, back to the relationships and patterns that match what you learned love was supposed to feel like.
Because familiar ground, even when it hurts, even when it exhausts you, feels safer than unfamiliar territory, even when that unfamiliar territory is actually much better for your heart and your well-being. So you might find yourself unconsciously creating distance when someone loves you consistently, testing their commitment when they show up reliably, looking for problems when there aren't any significant ones, creating drama to generate the intensity that your nervous system has learned to associate with real love, meaningful connection, relationships that are worth your attention. Or you might find yourself losing interest in people who make love feel simple, who don't require you to work for their affection, who choose you easily and consistently because simple doesn't match your internal template for what significant relationships are supposed to feel like. Without the struggle, without the chase, without the uncertainty, the relationship doesn't feel important enough, doesn't activate the parts of you that have learned to equate effort with evidence of love. This isn't self-sabotage in the way we usually think about it. It's your system trying to solve a problem it thinks still exists. How do I maintain safety in love? How do I make sure this person really sees me? How do I know this relationship is real if it doesn't require me to prove myself? And if your template for safety in love involves chase, uncertainty, and proving your worth, then easy love will feel unsafe even when it's actually the safest thing available to you. So how do you learn to stay present with love that feels different? How do you begin to trust that easy love might be real love, that consistent affection might be deep affection, that someone choosing you without conditions might be offering you exactly what your heart has always been seeking? First, by recognizing that the discomfort you feel with easy love isn't a sign that this love is wrong for you. It's a sign that this love is different for you, and different when it comes to healing old patterns and expanding your capacity for real intimacy is exactly what you need. Your nervous system needs evidence that love can be safe, that affection can be trusted, that you can be chosen without having to earn it through performance or sacrifice. But it needs this evidence gathered slowly in small doses over time with tremendous patience for the pace of your healing. So you practice staying present for just a moment longer when someone shows you consistent care. Instead of immediately creating distance or looking for problems or testing their commitment, you take a breath and ask yourself, what if this person actually sees me clearly and loves what they see? What if their easy affection is real affection, deep affection, the kind of love my heart has always been seeking? What if their consistency is evidence of their emotional maturity, not evidence that they don't really understand how love works? You practice tolerating the anxiety that comes with not having to chase someone, with not having to work for their attention, with not having to prove your worth to maintain their interest. When your system starts looking for uncertainty to create familiar intensity, when it starts scanning for problems to solve or ways to earn love, you gently redirect your attention to the present moment. Right now, in this moment, I am chosen. Right now, I don't have to work for love. Right now, I can just receive this care without having to earn it. Just rest in this affection without having to prove I deserve it. You practice staying curious about the person in front of you rather than projecting your old stories onto them. Instead of assuming that their consistency means they don't really see you, that their easy affection means they don't understand how love works, you ask yourself, what if their ability to love me steadily is actually a sign that they see me very clearly and choose me anyway? What if their lack of games and mixed signals means they're emotionally mature enough to handle real intimacy? What if their willingness to love me without conditions is exactly what I've been seeking all along? This is delicate work, patient work, the kind of healing that happens slowly and gently over time. Your nervous system has been protecting you for years, maybe decades, by steering you toward familiar forms of love, familiar relationship dynamics, familiar ways of earning affection and proving worth. It's not going to trust new information overnight. You might find that your body actually feels anxious when someone treats you well consistently, when they don't make you guess where you stand, when they express their feelings clearly and directly. Your stomach might churn, not because something is wrong, but because something is unfamiliar, different from what you learned love was supposed to feel like in your body. Your mind might create stories about why this person isn't right for you, not because they're actually wrong, but because they represent territory your system hasn't learned to navigate yet. Without the familiar struggle, without the need to earn their love, without the uncertainty that activates your nervous system, you might not recognize this as the love you've been seeking. This is where compassion becomes essential, not just for your patterns, but for the pace of your healing, for the time it takes your nervous system to learn new information, to trust new experiences, to believe that love can be safe and easy and real all at the same time. You can't force yourself to feel comfortable with unfamiliar love. You can only practice staying present with it for gradually longer periods of time, breathing through the anxiety that comes with receiving what you've always wanted in a form you don't immediately recognize. Maybe today you can stay present with someone's easy affection for one conversation without creating distance. Maybe tomorrow you can receive a compliment without deflecting it or looking for the hidden agenda. Maybe next week, you can let someone care for you when you're struggling without immediately trying to prove that you're worth their care, that you deserve their attention, that you'll pay them back somehow for their kindness. Small steps, gentle experiments, gradual expansion of your window of tolerance for love that doesn't match your old template, love that doesn't require you to work for it, love that sees you clearly and chooses you anyway. As we continue this gentle exploration, I want to share something with you that might surprise you. Underneath all the patterns of chasing love that hurts, underneath all the attraction to unavailable people and complicated relationships, underneath all the ways you've learned to earn and prove and work for affection, there's a deeper truth about what you're actually seeking. You're not actually seeking the chase. You're not actually seeking the uncertainty, the anxiety, the need to prove yourself worthy of love. You're not actually seeking relationships that hurt, that require constant effort, that leave you feeling depleted and confused and unsure of where you stand. What you're actually seeking, what your heart has been trying to find through all these complicated relationships, is the experience of being chosen. Not chosen conditionally, not chosen after you've proven yourself worthy, not chosen because you've worked harder than anyone else to win someone's attention, but chosen clearly, completely, consistently. Chosen for exactly who you are right now, without having to become someone different to maintain that choice. You're seeking the experience of being seen, really seen, clearly seen, completely seen, and loved anyway. Not loved despite your imperfections, but loved including your imperfections. Not loved for your potential, but loved for your reality.
Not loved because you're easy to love, but loved because you're you. And that's enough. That's valuable. That's worthy of consistent care and attention. You're seeking the experience of being valued, not for what you can do or provide or sacrifice,
but for who you are when you're not performing, when you're not trying to be anyone other than yourself, when you're just existing in your natural state without effort or strategy or the need to earn your place in someone's heart. You're seeking the experience of safety in love, the safety to be vulnerable without risking abandonment, the safety to have needs without being seen as too much, the safety to be imperfect without losing someone's interest, the safety to just be yourself and trust that yourself is enough. But here's what's happened. Because this kind of love wasn't consistently available in your early experiences, because the people who were meant to love you unconditionally may have had their own limitations and wounds and inability to see you clearly, your heart learned to look for these experiences in places where they weren't actually available. Your heart learned to seek the experience of being chosen by chasing people who couldn't quite choose you. It learned to seek the experience of being seen by trying to win the attention of people who couldn't quite see you clearly. It learned to seek the experience of being valued by proving your worth to people who couldn't quite value you for who you naturally were. This is why the pattern is so compelling, so magnetic, so difficult to break. Because underneath the chase is a beautiful, legitimate desire to be chosen. Underneath the effort to prove yourself is a beautiful, legitimate desire to be valued. Underneath the attraction to unavailable people is a beautiful, legitimate desire to be seen and loved completely. Your heart isn't wrong for wanting these things. Your heart isn't broken for seeking these experiences. Your heart is absolutely right. These are exactly what you deserve, exactly what every human heart needs to thrive, exactly what love is supposed to provide. The only thing that's happened is that your heart has been looking for these experiences in relationships that can't actually provide them. You've been trying to get chosen by people who can't choose consistently. You've been trying to get seen by people who can't see clearly. You've been trying to get valued by people who can't value unconditionally. And the cruel irony is that the harder you try, the further you get from what you're actually seeking. The more you chase someone who can't choose you, the less chosen you feel. The more you try to prove your worth to someone who can't see your value, the less valuable you feel. The more you work for love from someone who can't love freely, the less loved you feel. But what if there was another way? What if you could recognize these beautiful, legitimate desires of your heart and begin looking for them in places where they're actually available? What if you could learn to recognize the people who are capable of choosing you clearly, seeing you completely, valuing you unconditionally? What if the love you've been seeking through all these complicated relationships is actually available?
In much simpler forms, what if being chosen doesn't require you to win a competition? What if being seen doesn't require you to perform for someone's attention? What if being valued doesn't require you to prove your worth through sacrifice and effort?
What if someone could see all of you, your strengths and your struggles, your gifts and your growing edges, your light and your shadow, and their response could be not, "You need to change for me to love you," but "I see you clearly and I choose you"? What if someone could witness your needs, your desires, your vulnerabilities, your fears, and their response could be not, "You're too much," but "I see what you need and I want to care for you"? What if someone could experience your natural personality, your authentic self, your way of being in the world when you're not trying to be anyone else, and their response could be not, "You should be different," but "I love who you are"? This kind of love exists. These kinds of people exist. Relationships where you can rest instead of work, where you can be instead of perform, where you can receive instead of constantly give, where your worth is recognized rather than questioned. These relationships are possible, but recognizing them, trusting them, staying present with them when they show up requires healing. The parts of you that learned love was supposed to be difficult, that learned you had to earn affection, that learned your worth was something to be proven rather than something to be celebrated. It requires learning to distinguish between the familiar feeling of working for love and the unfamiliar feeling of being loved without conditions. It requires developing the capacity to receive what you've always wanted, even when it comes in a form that doesn't match your old template for how love works. It requires trusting that easy love might be real love, that consistent affection might be deep affection, that someone choosing you without requiring you to chase them might be offering you exactly what your heart has been seeking all along. The people you're meant to be with, the love that will actually nourish your soul, the relationships that will help you feel truly chosen and seen and valued, they're not going to require you to chase them. They're not going to make you prove your worth. They're not going to ask you to be someone other than who you are. They're going to see you clearly and choose you anyway. They're going to love your imperfections rather than challenging you to improve them. They're going to offer affection freely rather than making you earn it through performance or sacrifice. And learning to recognize this love, to trust it, to stay present with it even when it feels unfamiliar. This is the real work of healing these patterns. Not changing who you're attracted to, but changing your capacity to receive what you've always been seeking. As we move toward the heart of this healing journey, we need to talk about perhaps the deepest layer of transformation, coming to believe, not just intellectually but in your bones, in your nervous system, in the core of your being, that you deserve love that doesn't hurt. This might be the most challenging part of this entire exploration, because somewhere along the way, many of us absorbed the belief that we have to earn love through suffering, prove our worthiness through pain, demonstrate our devotion through enduring relationships that don't quite work, that don't quite nourish us, that don't quite see us clearly. And this learning happened so early, so fundamentally woven so deeply into our understanding of how relationships work, that it can feel like truth rather than belief, like reality rather than interpretation, like the way things are rather than the way things were in your particular experience of growing up. Maybe you learned that love is supposed to be work, supposed to be struggle, supposed to require constant effort to maintain. Maybe you learned that if you're not fighting for someone's attention, if you're not working to keep their interest, if you're not proving your worth on a regular basis, then you're not really loving them in the way they deserve to be loved. Maybe you learned that pain in relationships is just part of caring deeply, that jealousy means passion, that uncertainty means significance, that easy love is shallow love, and difficult love is deep love. Maybe you learned that love stories worth telling are always stories of overcoming obstacles, fighting for each other, choosing each other again and again despite difficulty and challenge. Or maybe you learned something even deeper, even more personal, that you specifically are the kind of person who gets difficult love. That easy love is for other people, people who are simpler, less complex, more naturally lovable, easier to understand and care for. That your particular combination of strengths and struggles, gifts and challenges, light and shadow means you're destined for relationships that require you to prove yourself, chase affection, or work constantly to maintain someone's interest and attention. But what if all of that is old information? What if all of that is based on conclusions you drew when you were too young to understand that the adults around you were doing the best they could with their own unhealed patterns, their own limitations, their own wounds and fears, and inability to love unconditionally? What if the difficult love you experienced wasn't a reflection of what you deserved, but a reflection of what the people around you had capacity to offer at that time? What if their inability to love you easily said nothing about your worthiness?
And everything about their own healing journey, their own relationship with love, their own capacity for intimacy and emotional availability.
Here's a truth that might be difficult to take in, that might feel too good to be true, that might activate every defense you've built against disappointment. You deserve love that feels like coming home to yourself, not like leaving yourself behind to win someone over. You deserve someone who sees your complexity and finds it beautiful, not someone who sees your complexity and wants to fix it, change it, improve it, or manage it. You deserve someone who chooses you consistently, not someone who keeps you guessing about where you stand, who makes their choice conditional on your behavior, your performance, your ability to meet their needs without having needs of your own. You deserve someone who expresses love through presence and consistency, not someone who expresses love through drama and intensity, through emotional volatility that keeps you activated and uncertain. You deserve someone who loves you for who you are right now, not someone who loves your potential or the version of you that might exist someday if you work hard enough to become who they want you to be. You deserve love that nourishes your nervous system instead of activating it, that helps you feel more like yourself instead of making you perform a version of yourself, that gives you energy instead of draining it, that makes your life feel more spacious instead of more contracted, more peaceful instead of more chaotic. I know this might sound impossible if you've never experienced it consistently. I know it might sound boring if you're used to the adrenaline rush of chase and uncertainty, if your nervous system has learned to equate intensity with significance, anxiety with attraction, effort with evidence that the relationship really
matters. I know it might sound too good to be true if you've learned that everything valuable in life requires struggle, that anything worth having must be fought for, that ease is suspicious and difficulty is proof that you're doing something
important. But the fact that you've never experienced it doesn't mean you don't deserve it. The fact that it feels unfamiliar doesn't mean it's not real, not possible, not meant for you. The fact that it doesn't match your old template for love doesn't mean it's not the love that would actually heal your heart and help you feel truly seen, chosen, cherished for exactly who you are. Your heart has been so brave, so persistent, so creative in its attempts to find love in all the places you learned love might be hiding. You've been chasing people who couldn't quite see you, hoping that if you just tried hard enough, loved them well enough, proved yourself worthy enough, they'd suddenly understand your value and choose you completely. You've been accepting breadcrumbs of affection and calling it love because you didn't know that full meals were available, that someone could actually be consistently generous with their care, their attention, their emotional availability. You've been so patient with people who couldn't choose you consistently, so understanding with people who couldn't express love clearly, so generous with people who could only offer you portions of themselves while asking for all of you in return. And now it's time to be patient with yourself as you learn to recognize and receive love that doesn't require any of that work, any of that effort, any of that constant proving and earning and chasing. This is the deepest healing, not just changing your patterns, not just choosing different people, but changing your fundamental sense of what you deserve. Not just understanding intellectually that you're worthy of good love, but knowing it in your bones, feeling it in your nervous system, living from the truth that you are deserving of relationships that nourish your soul rather than activate your fears. This belief that you deserve easy love, consistent love, unconditional love might feel arrogant or unrealistic at first. You might have thoughts like, who am I to expect that kind of love? Everyone has to work for love. That kind of love doesn't exist in the real world. I'm being too picky, too demanding, too idealistic. I should be grateful for whatever love I can get, even if it's complicated, even if it requires me to change, even if it hurts sometimes. These thoughts are understandable. They're trying to protect you from the disappointment of wanting something that seems impossible, from the vulnerability of believing you deserve something wonderful. But they're also keeping you trapped in patterns that don't serve your heart, that don't honor your worth, that don't reflect the truth of what love can be when it's offered freely. The truth is, love that doesn't hurt does exist. Relationships, where you don't have to chase affection, do exist. People who can see you clearly and choose you consistently do exist. Partnerships where your energy goes toward loving each other rather than trying to win each other, where your focus is on building something beautiful together rather than constantly working to maintain someone's interest, do exist, but you'll only be able to recognize and receive this kind of love when you believe, deep down, that you deserve it. When you know without question that your worth isn't something to be proven but something to be celebrated, that your love is a gift to be appreciated rather than a debt to be earned, and that belief is cultivated not through positive thinking or affirmations or trying to convince yourself of something you don't really believe, but through gradually treating yourself with the kind of love you want to receive, through setting boundaries with people who can only offer you crumbs of affection, through walking away from situations where you have to prove your worth, where your value is questioned rather than recognized, through choosing yourself even when it means being alone for a while, even when it means disappointing people who've grown accustomed to your willingness to accept less than you deserve, even when it means facing the fear that maybe you really don't deserve better, maybe this is all there is, maybe asking for more is asking for too much. Because here's what's beautiful about this process. When you start treating yourself like someone who deserves love that doesn't hurt, you become someone who can recognize love that doesn't hurt. When you start honoring your own worth instead of trying to prove it to others, you become attractive to people who can see your worth without you having to demonstrate it constantly. When you stop accepting less than you deserve, you create space for what you actually deserve to show up in your life. When you stop trying to earn love from people who can't give it freely, you become available to receive love from people who can. This doesn't mean you become demanding or entitled or impossible to please. It means you become clear about what love actually looks like, feels like, acts like. It means you become someone who can distinguish between love and anxiety, between chemistry and chaos, between passion and pursuit, between connection and activation. And from that clarity, you can make choices about relationships based on how they actually feel in your body, how they actually affect your nervous system, how they actually impact your sense of self-worth, rather than making choices based on how familiar they are, how much work they require, or how much they remind you of old patterns that feel like home, even when they hurt. As we begin to bring this exploration toward integration, let's talk about what it actually looks like to carry these insights with you into your daily life, your future relationships, your ongoing journey of healing and growth. Because understanding these patterns is just the beginning. The real transformation happens in how you apply this understanding moment by moment, choice by choice, relationship by relationship. Integration doesn't mean you'll never feel attracted to unavailable people again. It doesn't mean you'll never experience the familiar pull toward relationships that require you to prove your worth, never find yourself drawn to the intensity of chase and uncertainty, never have moments where you question whether you deserve love that doesn't require constant effort. Integration means you'll start to notice these patterns with compassion rather than judgment, with curiosity rather than shame, with the understanding that these old responses make perfect sense given what you learned about love and how it works. You'll begin to recognize the difference between love and anxiety in your body, between connection and activation in your nervous system. You'll start to pause when you feel the urge to chase someone, when your heart starts racing because someone seems interested but not quite available, and ask yourself, is this love, or is this my old pattern trying to solve an old problem? Is this person actually good for me, or do they just feel familiar? You'll begin to catch yourself when you start creating tests for people who love you consistently, when you start looking for problems in relationships that feel too peaceful, when you start interpreting someone's easy affection as evidence that they don't really see you, don't really understand what love costs, don't really appreciate what they have. And instead of fighting these impulses, instead of judging yourself for having them, you'll be able to say, oh, there's that part of me that learned love was supposed to be difficult. There's that part of me that's afraid of being loved unconditionally because unconditional love feels too good to be true. There's that part of me that's trying to keep me safe by steering me toward familiar ground, even when familiar ground
involves pain. And then you can choose, not perfectly, not every time, not without struggle or confusion or moments of doubt, but more and more often, you can choose to stay present with love that feels different. You can choose to trust that
someone's consistency might be real care, not shallow care. You can choose to interpret ease in relationship as safety, not boredom, as arriving rather than settling. This happens gradually, gently, with tremendous patience for the pace of your nervous system's healing. Your system needs time to learn that love can be safe, that affection can be trusted, that you can be chosen without having to earn it through performance or sacrifice. It needs evidence, gathered slowly over time, that unfamiliar love might actually be the love you've been seeking all along. So be patient with yourself as you learn new responses to love, new ways of being in relationship. Be gentle with the parts of you that still want to chase, prove, and perform. They've been trying to keep you safe for so long, and they need time to learn that safety might be available in ways they never imagined. You might find that as you stop chasing love that hurts, there's a period of loneliness, a time when you're between the old patterns and the new possibilities. This loneliness isn't a sign that you're being too picky or asking for too much. It's a sign that you're finally being selective, finally honoring your worth, finally creating space for what you actually deserve instead of settling for what's familiar. Use this space wisely. Use it to practice loving yourself the way you want to be loved, with consistency, with kindness, with appreciation for who you are, rather than demands for who you should become. Use it to notice what peace feels like in your body without the constant activation of chase and uncertainty. Use it to remember who you are when you're not performing for someone else's approval, when you're not trying to earn your place in someone's heart. In your daily life, this might look like paying attention to how different people affect your nervous system. Notice who makes you feel calm and who makes you feel activated. Notice who brings out your natural personality and who makes you feel like you need to be someone else. Notice who celebrates your complexity and who tries to simplify you, who sees your struggles with compassion and who sees them as problems to be fixed. Practicing receiving compliments, care, and attention without immediately deflecting or looking for the catch. When someone expresses appreciation for you, when someone shows consistent interest, when someone offers support without being asked, practice staying present with that experience instead of automatically creating distance or testing their sincerity. Setting boundaries with people who can only offer you conditional love, who require you to prove your worth repeatedly, who keep you guessing about where you stand. This doesn't mean cutting people off or being harsh. It means protecting your energy for relationships that actually nourish you rather than drain you. Choosing activities, friendships, and environments that reflect your worth rather than requiring you to prove it. Surrounding yourself with people who see your value clearly, who celebrate your authentic self, who don't need you to be someone different to earn their care and respect. Practicing saying no to opportunities to chase, prove, or earn love when you feel that familiar pull towards someone who can't quite choose you. When you notice yourself wanting to win over someone who seems uninterested, pause and ask yourself, what am I actually seeking here? And is this person capable of providing it? And from this space of knowing yourself, loving yourself, treating yourself with the care you want to receive, you'll begin to recognize people who can meet you there. People who don't need you to chase them because they're actively choosing you. People who don't need you to prove your worth because they can see it clearly. People who don't need you to create intensity because they can find depth in peace, passion in presence, significance in simplicity. These people might feel boring at first, remember? Your nervous system might tell you they're not exciting enough, not challenging enough, not significant enough. But stay curious, stay present. Notice what happens in your body over time when you're with someone who makes love feel like coming home instead of leaving home, like expansion instead of contraction, like peace instead of anxiety. Notice how your sleep improves when you're not constantly wondering where you stand with someone. Notice how your creativity flows when your energy isn't tied up in trying to decode mixed signals, when your mental space isn't consumed with strategies for maintaining someone's interest. Notice how much more present you can be with friends, family, work, your own dreams and goals when you're not obsessing over whether someone loves you enough. This is what becomes available when you stop chasing love that hurts. All the energy you've been using to pursue, prove, and perform becomes available for actually living your life, creating what matters to you, being present with the people who already love you clearly, and paradoxically, this makes you incredibly attractive to the kind of people who can offer you real love because you're no longer desperate for their approval. They can see who you actually are because you're no longer willing to accept less than you deserve. They rise to meet you at your level. Because you're no longer chasing them, they have space to choose you. As we continue to explore the transformation that becomes possible when you heal these patterns, I want to talk about something beautiful that happens. The healing doesn't just
affect your romantic relationships. It ripples out into every area of your life, changing how you relate to yourself, to your friends and family, to your work, to your dreams, to your sense of what's possible for your life when you stop accepting
love that requires you to prove your worth. You stop accepting other situations that require you to prove your worth. When you learn to recognize the difference between love and anxiety in your body, you become more sensitive to all the places in your life where you're operating from anxiety rather than genuine desire or connection. When you develop the capacity to receive affection without having to earn it, you develop the capacity to receive abundance in all its forms: compliments, opportunities, support, recognition, without immediately deflecting or looking for the catch or wondering what you owe in return. This healing changes your relationship with your work. You might find that you're no longer willing to stay in jobs that require you to constantly prove your value, that keep you guessing about your security, that demand you sacrifice your well-being to earn approval or advancement. You might discover that you're attracted to work environments where your contributions are recognized, where you're valued for who you are rather than how much you're willing to sacrifice, where you can be authentic rather than performing a version
of yourself. This healing changes your friendships. You might notice that you're drawn to people who celebrate your authentic self rather than people who require you to be someone different to maintain their friendship.
You might find that you're less willing to be the one who always gives, always accommodates, always manages other people's emotions at the expense of your own needs. You might discover that some friendships were based on your willingness to accept less than you deserved, to be the one who worked harder to maintain the connection, to be understanding of their limitations while hiding your own needs. And as you heal, these friendships might naturally shift or end, making space for relationships where care and effort are mutual, where you can be yourself without losing people's interest or approval. This healing changes your relationship with your family. You might find that you're less willing to accept conditional love from family members, less willing to pretend that hurtful dynamics are normal or loving, less willing to sacrifice your authentic self to maintain family harmony. This doesn't
mean you become harsh or cutting people off. It means you become boundaried. You learn to love people while also protecting your energy. You learn to stay connected to family while also staying connected to yourself.
You learn that you can care about people without taking responsibility for their emotions, their reactions, their inability to love you the way you deserve. This healing changes how you pursue your dreams and goals. When you stop believing that love has to be earned through struggle, you stop believing that everything valuable has to be achieved through struggle. You might find that you're able to pursue opportunities from a place of genuine interest rather than from a need to prove yourself. You might discover that you can work toward goals without attaching your worth to the outcome, without needing external validation to feel valuable. You might notice that you're more willing to take risks, more willing to put yourself out there, because your sense of worth isn't dependent on others' approval. You might find that you're more creative, more innovative, more willing to express your authentic voice because you're not constantly editing yourself to fit other people's expectations. This healing changes your relationship with your body, with pleasure, with rest. When you stop believing that you have to earn love through sacrifice, you stop believing that you have to earn care, comfort, and pleasure through sacrifice. You might find that you're more willing to prioritize your physical and emotional needs, more willing to rest without guilt, more willing to enjoy simple pleasures without feeling like you haven't done enough to deserve them. You might discover that you're more attuned to your body's signals when you're hungry, tired, overwhelmed, excited, content, because you're not constantly focused on reading other people's signals to maintain their interest. You have more attention available for your own inner experience. This healing changes your relationship with money and abundance. When you stop believing that love is scarce and must be earned, you start questioning other beliefs about scarcity. You might find that you're more willing to charge what you're worth, more willing to receive gifts and support, more willing to spend money on things that bring you joy, rather than only on things you can justify as necessary. This healing changes your relationship with time. When you're not spending emotional energy on relationships that require constant maintenance, you have more time and space for activities that truly nourish you. You might find that you have more energy for hobbies, for learning, for adventures, for spontaneous moments of joy. Most importantly, this healing changes your relationship with yourself. You begin to see yourself the way someone who loves you unconditionally would see you, with appreciation for your complexity, with compassion for your struggles, with celebration of your unique way of being in the world. You stop treating yourself as a project to be improved and start experiencing yourself as a person to be loved. You stop seeing your needs as burdens and start seeing them as natural parts of being human. You stop hiding parts of yourself out of fear that they're too much, and start expressing your full range of thoughts, feelings, and desires. You develop what psychologists call earned secure attachment, the ability to be your own secure base, to comfort yourself in distress, to celebrate yourself in joy, to see yourself clearly and choose yourself consistently. This doesn't mean you become perfect or that you no longer need other people. It means you become someone who can enter relationships from a place of wholeness rather than from a place of need. Someone who can love others without losing yourself. Someone who can receive love without having to earn it. And from this place
of inner security, of knowing your own worth, of treating yourself with love, you become naturally attractive to people who are also secure, who can also love without conditions, who can also choose consistently. The love you find from this place
isn't dramatic or intense in the old way. It's peaceful but passionate, easy but deep, simple but profound. It's the love your heart has always been seeking underneath all the familiar pain. As we come to the end of this journey together, I want you to know that everything we've explored tonight, all the patterns, all the beliefs, all the protective mechanisms that have been guiding your heart, they all make perfect sense. Your heart has been so intelligent, so creative, so persistently loving in its attempts to find safety and connection in a world where love wasn't always safe, where affection wasn't always consistent, where your worth wasn't always recognized
and celebrated. Every choice you've made, every person you've chased, every relationship that hurt, every moment of wondering why you couldn't just love someone who loved you easily. All of it has been your heart's attempt to solve very real
problems with the information and resources you had available at the time. You don't need to judge these patterns or rush to change them. You don't need to become someone different by tomorrow morning. You don't need to have all the answers or make dramatic changes or suddenly be attracted to completely different people. You just need to see these patterns clearly, hold them gently, appreciate them for how they've served you, and trust that understanding is the first step toward transformation. Understanding is the soil in which new possibilities can grow. Compassion is the water that nourishes them, and patience is the sunlight that allows them to unfold in their own perfect timing. Tonight, as you drift towards sleep, you can let your nervous system rest from the work of chasing, proving, and performing. You can let your heart rest from the exhaustion of trying to win love that was never meant to be won, of earning affection that was always meant to be freely given. You can let your body rest from the tension of constantly scanning for approval, from bracing for rejection, from the hypervigilance that comes with loving people who can't quite love you back consistently. In this moment, you don't have to be anything other than who you are. You don't have to earn rest, prove your worthiness of peace or work for the right to simply exist. You can just be here, breathing, resting, allowing yourself to be held by the simple truth of your own inherent worth. Let your breath slow down naturally. Let your body sink into whatever surface is supporting you. Let your mind release the stories about love, relationships, worthiness, and patterns. All of that can wait until tomorrow, if it needs your attention at all. Right now, you can just be someone who is learning that love doesn't have to hurt to be real. Someone who is discovering that you can be chosen without having to chase. Someone who is remembering that your worth isn't something you prove, but something you possess simply by existing, simply by being the unique expression of life that you are. As sleep approaches, let yourself imagine what it would feel like to be loved the way you've always deserved to be loved. Not the dramatic, difficult love of movies and songs, but the quiet, steady love that feels like coming home to yourself. Love that doesn't require you to be anything other than who you are. Love that sees your complexity and finds it beautiful. Love that chooses you not once, but over and over again, in small moments and big decisions. You don't have to believe this is possible for you right now. You don't have to figure out how to find it or create it. You just have to let your heart rest in the possibility that maybe, somewhere in your future, there is love waiting for you that feels like peace instead of anxiety, like expansion instead of contraction, like celebration instead of toleration. And maybe, as you heal the patterns that have been protecting you, as you learn to recognize love that doesn't require you to earn it, as you practice staying present with affection that doesn't hurt, maybe you'll discover that this love has been available all along, waiting for you to become ready to receive it. Let sleep come naturally now. Let your breathing slow and deepen. Let your body rest. Let your heart rest from all its hard work of seeking love in difficult places, of trying to solve impossible puzzles, of working so hard to earn what was always meant to be given freely. You are enough, exactly as you are. You are worthy of love that doesn't hurt. You are deserving of relationships that nourish your soul rather than activate your fears, that celebrate your authentic self rather than requiring you to perform, that choose you consistently rather than keeping you guessing. And tomorrow, when you wake, you'll still be enough. You'll still be worthy. You'll still deserve love that feels like coming home to yourself rather than leaving yourself behind. Rest now. Sleep peacefully. Trust that healing happens not through force, but through gentleness, not through changing yourself, but through loving yourself, not through finding the perfect person, but through becoming someone who can recognize and receive the love that would truly serve your heart. Let all of this settle into your dreams, into your rest, into the quiet wisdom of your sleeping mind. Let your heart remember what it's truly seeking underneath all the familiar patterns. Let your nervous system learn slowly and gently that safety in love is not only possible but available, not only available but deserved. You are loved. You are worthy. You are exactly where you need to be in your journey toward the love that would truly nourish your soul, the love that sees you clearly and chooses you anyway, the love that doesn't ask you to be perfect but celebrates you for being human. And perhaps as you sleep, your dreams will show you glimpses of this love, love that doesn't require you to chase it, love that doesn't demand you prove your worth, love that sees you clearly and chooses you anyway, love that feels like coming home to yourself.